people, CzarThwomp here, and welcome to episode 68 of the Great Ace Attorney 2. Last time, we started the second trial portion of the final case in the game, and we proved that Jigoku murdered Gregson aboard the SS Groots. But, however, something is wrong. Let's answer that. I'm just a little troubled by his silence, the true identity of the Reaper of the Baily, and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought upon against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion.
I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. I will blame it on the Nipponese. I will fight them now. I have renewed fire and vigor, especially considering that they will try to take me down. They will try to frame me for murder, and then send in their doomsday child from the demon scene or serial killer to destroy me. But I will not be stopped. I have a book to publish. As a prosecutor.
As you wish. Now, for the formal adjudication, I hereby declare the defendant, Barok and Zieks.
Objection!
The prosecution calls for adjudication be deferred. Counsel, the accused innocence hasn't been fully established at all, and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed! Nevertheless, Barok Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Jigoku, but it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot, into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is who coerced Jigoku? Who is pulling the strings?
Why would I want more Nipponese in this country? Oh yes, because my first move would have been, I want more Nipponese in this country. I want more Nipponese and I want more problems.
The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barok Van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Baily, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. What? What? Order, order, order! The Reaper of the Baily is a long-standing mystery counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case?
Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper.
Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here.
I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. What is it with you Nipponese and trying to besmirch my name? First, your father comes here and starts killing my brother, and then your my learned friend here, he just comes to my courtroom, he's like, hey, Lord Van Zieks, I want to ruin your day with my submission examinations. And then here you come in with these accusations. And mind you, after you were rude to me, You were always very rude to me. You never accepted my good mornings. You always sat on that pillow acting like you're some genie of sorts, thinking you're better than me. What? Well, you gonna grant me wishes because you had no wishes to grant?
You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. Remember all those times that we would go out for lunch and you would saddle me with the bill?
Are you seriously going on about the bill? I told you I would repay you later!
And do I have to bring up the how I had to work as your editor for free on your second book? Newsflash, Van Zieks. It's called collating your pages. Do it to make my life a little easier. And I will bring you to justice for it. Whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwillingly started 10 years ago. Very well. Whilst it's extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for the witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement with that he has had with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing.
Pray turn a blind eye to the discourse as I verify that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice. Because I'm going to kick some ass now.
Lord Van Zieks,
I first had discovered the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since that time, I've endured the weight of the implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now, and crush those allegations once for all.
good. Then I let justice decide, Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as its primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Baily. Sorry, just had a case of the hiccups just now. And what says the defense?
Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous. And Kazuma-sama is too emotional at the moment. He's not thinking logically.
You're right that he's not himself, but I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise, as a lawyer and as his friend.
Then what's what we must do?
The defense has no objections, my lord. Very well. Defendant, you will take to the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassination Exchange.
As you wish, my lord. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the Assassin Exchange.
So you deny all accusations by the prosecution, both that you are the Reaper of the Baily and that you masterminded the Assassination Exchange.
I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear.
Naturally, the prosecution believes that the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryuunosuke Naruto. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? A desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always been my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Ah, yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. And that one is actually pretty straightforward. Essentially, go to this one right here. Actually, no, it's the fourth one, because apparently the fourth one is the magical one. And present Clint's autopsy. What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks.
What? My brother's autopsy report?
I'm pleased to see. The defense doesn't intend to run away from the undeniable truth. Order in the court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant.
Not that accursed name again! The Professor!
I personally researched all the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, the autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Van Zieks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure.
And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible in the document.
As promised. Sorry.
Damn it, CzarThwomp! Stop mistaking me for the Nipponese! As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all of his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind.
Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zieks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true.
What?
Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death?
That's outrageous!
And now, 10 years later, for some reason, the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain. Using the two killers recruited for the assassination exchange. Order at once! 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer. To be sentenced to death. It was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. To which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost.
A toast to you being an edgelord. You have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese tendency of tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer.
And meanwhile, Athena senses a disturbance in the future. Come on, Kazuma, you won't know. Sorry, I actually pressed the A button too soon. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago? You must see that without evidence. That's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence in my heart. What? I believe it happened, and therefore it has. As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Shishiru Jigoku, but my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth.
What truth?
The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago.
What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret.
While we waited on my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Karuma, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was.
Right, I see. You're the Asogi's young lad, are you?
And what? You got me down with that thing? Is that it? I love Gregson's just look of sheer disinterest. Gregson, he's not terrified that this guy is gonna kill him in the cabin. Gregson is beyond death. Gregson's more like, hey, please, you think I'm afraid of dying? Well, newsflash. I'm extorted by a 10-year-old little girl who controls London, who controls the entirety of London from behind the shadows. Okay? I don't fear death at this point. In fact, I'd welcome it. It would get me away from that crazy, psychopathic little monster. That very much will depend on the answers you give to my question. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all.
Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I'm not afraid to die, and I will tell you the F-off at the end. Because her ladyship, if her ladyship finds out that you killed me, oh, God help your soul, because her ladyship will take you down. She will do everything in her power to hunt you down and make you suffer a slow and painful death. By the end of the ordeal, you will be praying for the sweet release of death. I still believe your father was a professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately, back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick.
So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated?
I regret nothing. It was for the good of the country. Anyways, I was just following orders.
Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak!
I'm not saying another word.
Even if your life depends on it?
That's right. Even then.
So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the result of Clint Van Zieks' autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barok Van Zieks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly, and as was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaisoned with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. Ah. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barok Van Zieks.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi!
What?
What you've just told this court, are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago?
I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission.
In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper.
What? What? Lord Van Zieks.
I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one.
If Lord Van Zieks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. You. I just have a feeling that this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Baily is... I Iris Wilson. Iris has been manipulating things. She was in the cradle, and she was manipulating that case. She was playing everyone for puppets. Everyone was a puppet. Yujin was a puppet. Shijiro was a puppet. Strongheart was a puppet. Van Zieks was a puppet. Even Vigil was a puppet. Kaiden was a puppet. Gregson was a puppet. Kazuma was a puppet. Everyone on this board was a puppet in Iris's sick little show. And all the while, Sherlock was sitting back in his seat with that smug grin eating some popcorn. Some poppet corn.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulate the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mal Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago, the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother, Clint Van Zieks, had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zieks?
10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the Lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle that trial. But I see now, I was very much mistaken.
It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Shishiru Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Baily.
The court awaits a response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense.
It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal. Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are nonsense. A wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zieks' autopsy? That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted it. And where's your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. And then basically at that point, I have already plans in motion. And then they reel in a crane, and they just reveal Ami Faye, who's just saying it. I'm not channeling him. I want ramen noodle. I will give you the noodles after you channel Gregson. No, noodles now, ramen now, Gregson later. You mean to say, I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entering some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Ah! Order in the court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and in live Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there?
So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange.
The court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections. Kazuma, he's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. There is. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Scythe won't say anything against strong hearts. But there's still one ray of hope.
Objection.
Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about the autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who? Ryuunosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy report of Clint Van Zieks is... We're gonna call Fabian DeRusso! He's coming to the stand with Peppino! No, we're gonna get Beepo. Beepo's gonna come to the stand. We're gonna call Kazuma. Kazuma's gonna come to the stand as well.
Take that!
Heaven help us! Another Japanese! An expert in forensic medicine, my lord. Professor Yujin Mikitoba. 16 years ago, he came to London with Shishiru Jigoku and Genshin Asogi as a visiting student. What could this testimony possibly tell us?
Professor Mikitoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report.
Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature.
It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it.
In other words, Professor Mikitoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikitoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense's demand is denied. What?
But Professor Mikitoba is in London at the very moment. We can summon him to the stand in minutes.
No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory. As you seem to have forgotten the prosecution stance, only minutes ago you accused the defendant of being the reaper of mastermind the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requested evidence, but that's exactly why we need witness testimony. Don't make me beat you with this unicorn staff. This unicorn pimp cane, I will beat you with it down like the hoe you are. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Now, as I said earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter end, and if you'll excuse me, I will exorcise this demon from your body. The power of... Yeah, and then basically at that point, I will bring in the greatest spiritual powers in all of England. And then basically at that point, Sherlock comes in with a copy of his book, of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The power of Sherlock Holmes compels you. The power of the great detective compels you. The power of the great detective compels you. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Justice Judge Shichiro Jigoku. And as for any circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in the due course by the proper authorities.
Objection.
But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. What you mean me? I'm not covering tracks, I'm a good man. I support the community. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be remanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. This futile game of revenge is over. Young Master Asogi. And then his Kazuma breaks the stand. Gah. I can't do the Asogi scream. No, I can't do that scream justice. that whole whoa screen. I'm sorry. They can't replicate it. That'll be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Court is. I have arrived! Mr. Sholmes? This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public? You will leave the courtroom at once.
Objection.
Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Shishiro Chikoku before he fled from Europe. This court should hear what he has to say. No. Lord Master Strongheart, it's imperative that you're favor bringing this trial to an end at this stage, but we will be bringing the episode to an end, because I think now it'd be good to end things off. Anyways, I really appreciate that you stuck around to watch this episode. You're a great viewer, and I hope you come back for the next one. If you like the video, like, subscribe, comment, share, where's the one. Without, see you next time. Bye.